So we're here to talk about leveraging a virtual assistant. I'm going to show you a couple things, and then I'll introduce myself and to everybody. So how a virtual assistant can help. Here's some of the things that I've worked with virtual assistants on. Some of the probably 1,000 things by now. Ordering flowers for a loved one. Having somebody do hours of difficult or tedious data entry. Formatting and self-publishing a book, 5 stars on Amazon. Planning a trip to Tokyo. Planning surf trips. And so I'd like to open up to you guys who have joined the call. What are some things that you're hoping to accomplish with the help of virtual assistants?
Sure. I've hoping to schedule some appointments and make sure that the time I have available is well used.
Awesome. Thanks, Sergey. How about you, Bo?
Young Alex, this is Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
I don't know if my face is on there or not.
I was going to say that I hope to help with scheduling appointments for lead generation for my ideal clients.
Yeah. How about you, Kyle?
Graphic design, kind of travel reservation booking, and general data entry in terms of manipulation of Excel spreadsheets and financial information.
Perfect. Any others?
Yeah, I want someone to look up the obscure, the non-touristy things of traveling, so I don't have to spend all day doing the research.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Any others? Cool. I think those are some great ones. I'm so glad you guys came with some suggestions in mind. I'm hearing about lead generation, travel help, maybe travel hacking, graphic design, data entry, some spreadsheet work. So I think those are all things I do.
Sorry, I had it on mute. I wanted to add. I don't know how feasible this is, but I sure as heck would like somebody to help me with managing, slumlording. It's this one apartment building. Yeah.
Yeah. So doing a little property management.
Yeah. Like
virtual plumber, virtual electrician.
That would be great if they could, but I'm thinking more just, bookkeeping and answering emails and calls to not have me have to do it. Like I'll still do the screening and stuff, but just helping with the clerical and basics, the basics of not going crazy.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think that's possible. Cool. Thank you. Any others? Okay, hearing none. Let's see how we can begin to do that stuff for you guys. So we've got 2 people facilitating the call today. Me, Alex Zelensky. I've worked with virtual assistants of all kinds and cultures for over 6 years. And then we have Kristen. And Kristen is an experienced virtual assistant to individuals and companies, including some experience with Fancy Hands. And Kristen has worked with me as my virtual assistant. And Kristen, did you want to say anything more by way of introduction?
Sure. Well, of course, I'm Kristen, and I've been doing this for about 6-7 years. My background originally came out of property management. My family owns a property management and real estate company out here in Southern California. I'm in San Diego. So I kind of started there doing stuff with my mom as I got married really young, and my husband's in the military. And we have children, so it was really easy to do. And then it kind of just transposed into this by word of mouth, and here we are. So I've worked with various people in various settings and have a lot of connections with people who can do stuff that I might not be able to do.
Got it. It sounds perfect for David, right?
Perfect.
So the agenda today is first we're going to look at a case study of virtual assistants. Then we're going to see how to, which is 2.5 days in Tokyo. We're going to talk about how to choose the right kind of VA for you, because different things require different types of people. And then some virtual assistant best practices. And finally, we'll open up for some Q&A. So the housekeeping here is there's going to be kind of long chunks, medium-sized chunks, let's say, of us just speaking and showing you some things. As we're going along, if you'll write down any questions that you'll have, share questions in the chat as we go, and then there are built-in breaks for taking questions from the chat or just speaking them out. And at the very end, we'll unmute the lines again for Q&A. But again, if you need to jump in, you're welcome to do that. Hearing no objections, we'll start moving forward. So a little bit of a case study. This is, I was living and working in India and about to come back into the United States, and realized that I could have a little mini vacation for myself, but also realized that I wanted to visit a place I may never visit again, do as much as I possibly could in a really short period of time. And I thought to myself, I can't do it. I don't know enough about this place, Tokyo, to really cram as much as possible in the 2.5 days. I need help. I need help with the scheduling. I need help with the culture. I need help knowing what the cool things are and how to get from one place to another. So this is a case study in that. And this is the message that was at the very top of the itinerary that my virtual assistant made for me. I cannot speak Japanese. I am lost. I want to go to this address. So here's what I was able to do. Let's see the success. First day, arrive at the airport, visit the Asakusa temples, Japan's oldest shrine, eat some ramen near the temple, check into the Airbnb, and sleep. That's the first half. Next, surfing in Katsura. Getting picked up as a hitchhiker and taken to a bus stop. That wasn't part of the plan, but when you have a good plan, you can have fun adventures. Eating some amazing meats, including beef heart sashimi, that's raw beef heart. And visiting the amazing tiny bars in Golden Gai. The gentleman then there was really excited to take a picture with me because we both have no hair. And then on Saturday, visiting the famous fish market in the middle of Tokyo at 9 a.m., having a walk through, making sushi and drinking sake with a sushi chef. Nerding out by visiting Akihabara, climbing a 13-story mall of anime and games, and visiting an onsen spa, which is a traditional Japanese spa where you hang out and get naked with other men. Kristen?
Yes.
Kristen made a face. So here's how to start with that. We're still in the case study. You want to identify the type of work you want to do. So I ask myself 3 questions. Is this one-time or ongoing work? And in this case, it's one-time work. It's one trip. I just need a little bit of help. Is culture important, right, to this? And in this case, yes, culture is really important. Sometimes like data entry, maybe spreadsheet design, culture may not be as important, but if I'm communicating with a culture externally, even if it's visiting Tokyo or if it's managing the communications for a property, I'm going to want someone who understands the culture I'm communicating with. So this case, I needed someone who understands Americans, me, and speaks Japanese and understands Tokyo. And is a special expertise required? And again, in this case, yes, I need someone to buy a SIM card and explain Tokyo transportation and reservations. So that's how I think about what kind of assistant I might need. We'll talk more about that later. The different kinds of work and the different kind of assistance you would go after. So we start to think about what the goals are and what we're asking for. Given the above, I thought to myself, I need a short-term person, one time, special expertise, kind of maybe a higher level of expertise in communication. So I took that to Upwork. And at Upwork, I created this description. Plan and virtually assist a very short trip to Tokyo. I'm making a short trip. I'm looking for help making reservations, arrange itinerary, choosing lodging, finding a SIM card. I said I imagine this to be a 2 or 3 hour project for the right person. I was wrong. It was a bigger project than that. And additionally, wanted the right person to be available for quick assistance and translation. Setting up this whole project, I negotiated a contract of $100, which I thought was well worth, making sure I can cram as much as I can into 2.5 days. And so when I'm interviewing people, because there's probably an interview process, Upwork actually lets you ask the questions in advance. I'm thinking, what can I do to sort of test this person, that they communicate well with me and that they're knowledgeable about the thing I would like them to be knowledgeable in. In this case, you'll notice the questions are so specific. So one is, what's the best way to get short-term voice and data on a cell phone in Tokyo? That's something that I just really, really need to know that the person can do for me. So I need an answer up front. And are you willing to take surprise phone calls or line messages, lines like the messaging app in Japan, during a short trip? And so putting that out there allows me to very quickly filter the sort of people who apply to do work with me. And I had a wonderful winner who answered the first question about SIM cards in detail and even volunteered to personally deliver the SIM card to me. He ended up mailing it to my Airbnb in advance, so it was waiting for me there when I showed up. I just took it out and popped it in my phone, done. And are you willing to communicate with me over the course? And he said, absolutely, and I'll even be able to come to you if you need me to. So I said, this guy's going to be perfect. And the last thing I did was communicate with him clear milestones. So it's kind of, you want to chunk the work assignments that you're giving. So in this case, there are 4. Each one of these was tied to a milestone payment because it's a short-term project. So it's complete reservations. This is restaurants, any other place I want to go to. Provide commuting guidance for the itinerary. So he gave me very clear directions, what place to go in what order, where to stand and wait for the bus, what subway to get on, things like that. Obtain a working SIM card and be available for help during the trip. I'm going to pause there, and we're going to open up from what you saw of this case study and thinking more about virtual assistants. Do you have any questions that are coming to mind for you?
So where did you post your request for getting the assistant? Where did you look online to communicate this?
Mm-hmm. So this one, I went to a website called Upwork. And the website Upwork allows you to post for projects. A lot of times people will use it for things like freelancers, so finding coders. But there's a wealth of people. So I would use something like Upwork, and after the call, I think we're going to put together resources based on the questions that you're asking here. So I can send you to like what's Upwork and what are the alternatives. So this one was Upwork.
How long did it take you to define the work or the project?
Defining the work for me didn't take too long. I probably had to really think about it for about a half an hour. One of the cool things about practicing working with virtual assistants is that you, over time, learn how to ask for help better, learn how to make better, more clear, more concise requests. So if this had been my very first time, I might have taken a bit more time to make it, or I might have even found that I wasn't communicating clearly enough and there'd be some more back and forth. In this case, I've had some practice, so it probably did take a half hour to really think it through. And get it nice and crisp for that person. And even as we were working together, we did go back and forth a bit to figure things out together.
What about pricing out the job, Alex?
Mm-hmm. For me, I just take a guess and hope for the best. So this one, I said I kind of think about what I'm really willing to pay to get it done. For me, I thought $100. I said I'd be willing to part with $100. It seems fair for the task. And on Upwork, people can renegotiate with you, so they can say, they usually won't go less, but they'll sometimes go more. And I wonder if, Kristen, if you have any thoughts about how to price out. I know really you work long-term with people, but do you have any thoughts about pricing out smaller chunks of work?
Yeah, I would basically just kind of price it out, kind of just see it as a service. Obviously, you'll always find somebody who can do something for a lower amount, but that comes down to quality and if they're really going to work with you and for you, or just give you BS answers that you could probably find yourself. So I would just price with what you're comfortable with, but you don't have to be like super extravagant. And then also on the other side, don't say like, oh, well, I only want to pay $5 to have somebody plan a week vacation for my wife and I in Aruba, because that probably will get somebody to inquire about that, and they'll tell you everything, and you'll probably feel like you wasted your $5. So it's just like, be reasonable, like you would do with anything else in life.
Yeah, it's worth saying it is a competitive market, so probably you'll find someone for the price point. just for me, the way I think, I'm not necessarily looking for a bargain. I'm thinking I'm willing to pay this much to save this much time. I have this budget, and so I'm just kind of honest with myself about what I can afford and what the value is to me. I don't know if that's helpful, but it's I play on that level. Yeah.
Alex, it looks like Natalie had raised her hand.
Okay, can we get Natalie?
Yeah, unmute her.
Hi guys, I find that my issue with thinking of things to do with a virtual assistant is that I come up with all kinds of things right after I've already done it for myself. And then I think, boy, that would have been great for a virtual assistant. Do you have some kind of resource you use to just quickly come up with, hey, my virtual assistant could do that for me?
Kristen, what do you think?
I think that is just, I don't think there's like a resource. I think what I've told my clients who are like-minded is kind of just pause before you do something and think about what your time is worth and if it's worth your time. Like if you're looking for a nice restaurant to go to while you're in Santa Monica, you can say, yeah, I can hop on Google myself, but I really have other things I have to do. You know what? Let me call XYZ or text them and say, hey, can you find me a place for 4 people instead of you wasting your own time? So it's more of a kind of just like stop and pause before you do things. It's not really like a real system or process to it as far like digitally at least. But
okay, that's
it takes a little mind training, but it happens. It'll happen for you.
Okay, yeah, I like the idea of stopping and thinking about whether or not I need to do a task myself. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
Actually, I think I have like a thing how I deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
With my small company, if it's okay.
Please. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I'm trying to build a small IT company, and we do videos and homepages and complex IT systems and designs and all kind of stuff. And I'm like totally overworked. So I'm like told myself, okay, I cannot proceed with this. And what I try to do since then is to kind of like every week once think about all the things that I did multiple times, like everything that is reoccurring. And then I just really think very, very intensively about, can I outsource that somehow? So with this kind of work, I, for example, saw that I will very often, it's okay. I think that goes too far. That's about another project. But the general concept is that I'm just interested in anything that I do regularly, and then I try to outsource that. And I force myself to really think about it, because if I don't have that hour or something where I just think about that, it's kind of like I'm always in the business and not on the business.
Yeah.
Like working
that. I think Sebastian is really hitting on something important, which is that this sort of sharing your work with others is a leadership practice and a habit, and so it takes some flexing. And so I like Sebastian's routine of looking at his week and going, I think this would help with you, Natalie. You're saying I already did it, and then I think about it. That might be great, actually, a reflection practice to take a moment every now and then and sit down and go, what did I do in this last week that maybe would be possible for me to outsource? Well, let's move on from here. Let's move a little bit forward. We'll have a couple more question breaks coming up. We're going to move. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to move into how to choose a virtual assistant. And here I'm going to be talking about the kind of levels and types of virtual assistants. And you're going to see that I'm thinking about first the kind of tasks. So you'll remember earlier in the case study when I asked myself those 3 questions about the kind of work that needs to be done. So I'm thinking first about the work, and then I'm thinking about the kind of virtual assistants I might need. So that is not the right rectangle to move, but we'll work with that. So let's look at the very top row. So for one-off disparate tasks, these are things like send flowers, online research. Maybe it's a smaller large amount of data entry. I'm going to use something like request services. So Fancy Hands is a great example. After the call, I'll send out a discount link to Fancy Hands so that you can start a little easier. And that at the kind of medium level tends to be about $50 a month, or depending on how you're thinking about it, around $9 an hour. What I really like about something like a Fancy Hands is that it enables you to just dip your toes in and practice. You send one email to a pool of VAs. One person picks it up. You don't know who's going to pick it up, but somebody picks it up. It's about a 20-minute task. So whenever you do this, you're risking something like, I don't know, $5 to practice delegating and see what comes out of that. And I also like the pool because I've been surprised by the sort of expertise that comes out of there. So for example, I wanted to learn more about what an LLC, what it takes to form an LLC in California, and what the difference is between LLC and S corp. And I just didn't want to spend hours. And somebody who had been a business administrator did that research for me and added a little of her own personal insight. So I appreciated that. The people tend to be Americans. I think maybe all are Americans. So it's quick. There's no cultural divide to cross. So if you're new to it and you just want to experiment, you want a lightweight, low risk way to just get into trying this out, I think Fancy Hands is a wonder. Fancy Hands and services like it are a wonderful way to start. Short-term projects, so like going to Japan, right? Going to Tokyo and planning that out, or creating the Instagram video that was playing at the top of the call that maybe you've seen. That Instagram video was about $35 to put together on using Fiverr. So we talked about Upwork and services like Upwork already. Upwork is a great way to get at some things with nuance. So if you have custom specifications, you have a longer term relationship you're trying to build, something more complicated, you might use something like Upwork. And this is, I would say Fiverr is more about a person expresses a more niche expertise, like creating an Instagram video, like doing a voiceover, like doing a certain kind of data entry or translation. I think Fiverr is more for that. I also used Upwork to find a French tutor from Haiti. I wanted to get better at my French, and I thought, I don't know, a French tutor nearby. I don't really have the time to go to a class, but someone who's very well versed in French from Haiti was able to tutor me up that way for a bit of a lower price, which was great. And one thing to say about that is you can sometimes be even more creative than the person themselves. So when I hired the French tutor from Haiti, she wasn't somebody who is a French tutor. She's like, I think, an executive assistant by trade. And so, and does some translations. And I said, hey, would you be willing, I found her on Upwork. Rather than post an ad, I looked for her. And I said, would you be willing to do this kind of work? And she was excited to do it. So if you're creative, you might be surprised what comes out of that. And so the next is ongoing work, independent of culture and language. So, I mean, 4-hour work week style, when we talk about virtual assistants, we often think about the geo arbitrage portion of this. So I'm a person who's in the United States or Germany or some other place, and I want to get folks who are used to receiving a different level of currency. So very popular to get a virtual assistant from India or from the Philippines, great places for that. And they are working with folks there, help with the budget. They can do awesome things like data entry and sort email. You might be able to get someone with a very high level of expertise for the price that you're paying. One thing to be thoughtful about is if you want your virtual assistant to work with a particular culture and communication, that can be tough. So if my virtual assistant is only communicating with me, then I can get used to crossing a cultural divide. But if I'm asking them to communicate with more people in a culture that is not their culture, or a language that is not their native language, I think that can be tough. I wouldn't recommend it in that case. So Kyle, when you talk about spreadsheets and graphs and things like that, I think going this route would be a great way to go. But David, when you talk about working with people who are in the US and communicating with them directly and making decisions on your behalf, then I would probably stick to someone who's in the culture of the people that you're working with. And so that leads us to someone who's a lot like Kristen. So this is ongoing work. This is a specific culture or language. And this is a person who can do the normal tasks, but also communicate more outwardly with you. So we're talking about managing social media, representing you publicly, making decisions for you. This is a dedicated virtual assistant of a specific culture. And I want to say something nuanced here that I'd like everyone to hear, and that's this. I'm not saying a virtual assistant who is American or a virtual assistant who is French or German or anything like that. I'm saying it's smart to have a virtual assistant who's in the culture that you want to communicate with. So when I was living and working in India, I had a virtual assistant who also lives and works in India, because I needed things done in India and I needed her to communicate with people in India, and I needed to understand things about India, and she was able to do things that I just can't do, right? So it's just be thoughtful about what culture you'd like them to communicate in. And so here's another place to pause. This is a question break. Any questions about, and feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
Yeah, Alex, when you talked about the ongoing tasks, would you still go to Fiverr or Upwork for those? You didn't have any resources there, so I'm curious if there's, you know, if you find that quality of freelancer and dedicated assistant on those platforms, or if there's anything else you recommend. And then also, how do you kind of vet people for that ongoing assignment, right? We've used people for accountants and bookkeeping for months, if not years at a time, but it can be hard if someone takes a project for a month and then moves on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do think you can build a relationship with someone you find on Upwork and Fiverr. I think in that case, I think in all cases for interviewing, it's good to do a trial period, give someone some sample projects. I think even Kristen and I don't really recall, but I think we did like a trial month. Is that true? Do you remember?
Yeah, we did. We did a trial month just to see how our personalities would kind of mesh together, and kind of just to get to know each other and make sure it was right for both of us to work together. And we worked together for over a year, and it worked out very well for both of us. And I think that's just like when you just do trials, and I think is really important, I'll talk about it later, to get to know the person who you are going to have joining you and, like, I guess, collaborating with you to make things in your life easier, whether it's business or personal. You want that person, if they're that involved, to really like get along and understand your desires for what you want done, instead of having like a random person who works for you for a month. Like, you don't want those people having your credit card information or knowing your address to send your wife flowers or things like that, if you're only going to work with them for like a couple weeks.
I have a question. How do you deal with issues of the assistant, like when they mess up? Because I have an assistant, and like recently, like every single thing she put on my calendar, she put in the wrong time zone, or she didn't put it in correctly. And you know, I've explained to her to make sure to check the time zone she puts stuff in, and you know, double check things. But you know, she's doing pretty well otherwise. But just like little mistakes like that, like how do you? Because they're not really an employee, and you can't really discipline them the same way that you would an employee.
Do you want to answer that, Alex, or do you want me to?
You have to answer that. Alex is offline.
Oh, Alex is off. Okay, so I'll answer that for you. So what you have come across happens. Sometimes it's human nature. Sometimes it's just not paying attention and lacking responsibility. And you actually can discipline even though they're independent. And it's not like disciplining like you're going to fire them, but they have to treat it like it's theirs. So like, for instance, for me, I'm a mom. I have 3 kids who are now school aged. And And I did calendar management and a whole lot of managing of everything for somebody who is in the public eye and media. So I handled her schedules. I handled media requests from news stations, TV channels, her agent, all of that. One time I did mess up, and I learned the implications and consequences of doing such, and I never messed up again because I got threatened, because I really liked enjoying and working with her, and I liked just everything I was doing, and I didn't want to mess that up. So you kind of have to give like an incentive to not mess up if they're doing something continuous, because small mistakes can equate to huge mistakes in the end. And that's just simple carelessness, because it's not hard.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I think I didn't mention the one mistake. I did mention one of them, but the other one was like she just didn't put in the restaurant she just put the mall where the restaurant was, but that made it hard for me when I got there because I couldn't figure out where the restaurant was because it was a huge mall. But I didn't want to be like, like I ended up just looking it up myself on Google Maps, obviously. But
Yeah,
I just, it's like a small little thing that made it extra work for me.
Yeah, that's not what she didn't complete what she was supposed to do, though. You should just always like pay attention. She should just like focus on attention to detail. So instead of just saying, oh, the restaurant's at the mall, you can say like it's on this portion of the mall because its interest is at Bloomingdale's and this or that, and they have valet parking on the other side. Like just give all the details they could possibly need, and I would just ask for that to be incredibly detailed with everything, instead of just what she would do for herself.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, not a problem.
Cool. I lost my connection for a little bit, but thank you, Kristen. That's a great answer. And Kyle, just to circle back to your question with a good response there, there are services. So Upwork and Fiverr, you certainly could build a relationship there with any relationship. Try it for a month. There are services for finding, and we'll send those out, for services and websites for connecting with VAs internationally, like in the Philippines and in India. There are a handful that I either like or I'm at least okay with. I think there the trial is really important. And then in my experience, finding a dedicated VA in the U.S. culture has surprised me by being a little bit about networking. And so Kristen actually has a really nice knowledge and network. And so I think for this call, we're going to suggest reaching out to her because she'll be able to vet you, and she's got some great contacts. And I got to find Kristen because we share a network together. Kyle, is that a helpful answer for now? And we'll send you out more information later.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we're still in our question break. Is there any other? And we will have one last question break in a little bit. If there's anything right now, we'll be glad. Okay, hearing none. This is Virtual Assistant Best Practices. Kristen's going to take us through 6 and maybe more Virtual Assistant practices. And Kristen, just tell me when to click to the next one, okay?
All right, go ahead. And I'm sorry, guys, my little boy is running around, so don't mind him. So some of the best practices, as you see here, would be like good vibes and good connections. So when you're on the level of having like a dedicated VA, like I was stating earlier, you want to have somebody who you have a good connection with and kind of like the same ideology about things. Because obviously, like an example, if you have a huge case of wanderlust and you like to travel, you're not going to want to work with somebody who knows nothing, is not like culturally experienced, and couldn't recommend up from down for you. So just like getting along with the person and having just the overall good connection is super, super important when it comes to that level of assistance. I'm going to go to the next one. And be clear in what you want. So clarity is key, and I'm sure we've all heard that before. But knowing exactly what you want, regardless of how ridiculous you think it sounds, is super important, because it's kind of like a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So if you're clear and say, like, hey, I need help finding a gift for my brother-in-law that I don't really like or know, and he's 30 and he likes to go snowboarding. like, okay, cool, I can do that, but you were clear with what you needed, or just like anything else, just be very, very, very clear. And that helps like set expectations for the long run as well.
I'd like to jump in here, if you don't mind, Kristen, and say
Sure.
It does take practice as a person sharing work.
Yes.
And so I think for me, I've learned that I need to have a willingness to see and admit that I have not been clear. And I think that goes a long way.
Yes, absolutely. Be open to trial and error. So in the beginning, just like any type of relationship with anybody, either professionally or personally, things don't always work out the way there should be from the jump. So to just be open-minded to different ideas, different ways of doing what you want to be done, like to get your ultimate result that you're looking for. So things happen, especially like when you're implementing systems and processes to keep organized. Some people, just based on their personality type, have issues with certain things. So the only way to really learn and understand is to be open-minded and be okay with trial and error.
Yeah, and I'll add that sometimes your VA knows how to do things better than you do.
Yes.
What's something you didn't think of that's really great.
Precisely. Yeah, so get a non-disclosure agreement and then share away. Non-disclosure is really important because, again, once you're at the level of having somebody who is basically collaborating with you and talking to you on a pretty consistent basis and helping in your life in a pretty consistent basis, you want to just like kind of have some reassurance that they're not going to go tell everybody everything or disclose anything. And then once you have that and you're comfortable with them as a person, things get a lot easier, especially if something just gets like complex or you want to do a big surprise or do something like that. Where it's not information that you would necessarily feel comfortable giving to a random person in India or Taiwan or whatever. So it's just, that's like at a comfort point once it gets to the NDA, but it's definitely a good practice to cover yourself and the assistant. And then systems to keep tasks. There's a whole bunch of them. And again, that's all personality based. I have clients who love Asana, which is a task management where you can make like just like task lists, boards, things like that. And then I have some people who are kind of old school and like pen and paper, write it down on their nightstand at night and send me a picture of their message on my iPhone. So as long as you have a system to kind of keep your thoughts and what you need to get done in a place, that's all that matters. And there's always something for everybody digitally out there. It's just the fact of finding what works for you. And if you're the type of person who likes and has the time to learn a new system, or if you want something to just jump right into.
And Sebastian was getting earlier at, you know, when you have a more complex network of help, you know, some things aren't going to work. So I can't do email. Like some people will send emails back and forth. That's not going to work. I'm going to lose track of the emails. Exactly. I work with Kristen and maybe even a couple other people at the same time. I sometimes even forget what I asked or what the details were because, you know, there's just so many balls in the air. So something like Sebastian, you mentioned Trello. I'd say Asana is like a more advanced version of Trello.
Yeah.
It's good. You might find that you start getting into that.
I've considered Asana as well. I have one question regarding Asana. Don't the people there see the other people?
You can make different boards. And so you have control over that. It takes some digging into Asana, but you have some control.
But do the people, like even if it's like not in the certain board, do they have a way to see like the other people who are in that kind of Asana system?
I think that you have control over that. I think you have control over that. I'm not 100%, but
yeah, he does. You have control over that. Like you basically.
What would make it better to Trello?
It's just a more robust system. It's just you can have boards interrelate with each other, things like that.
To relate with each other, what do you mean by that?
Like a task can sit on two boards at once, for example.
I use Asana and I love it, and it works really well. And I have different teams, and I also have separate organizations. So you can have a separate you can make as many organizations as you want, I think. But I have one organization for my personal stuff and one organization for my business stuff. And then within each organization, you can have different teams. And then within each team, you can have projects. So you can have it really broken down and organized. And they have a search function, so you can search anything, even if it's checked off. And we use it for all of our tasks, so we can keep a record of everything. You can add files and photos and everything too.
Great tips. Thanks, Joe.
Many of the things I think can be possible in Trello too. Regarding the 2 cards, do you have an example when that could be useful to create 2 cards and 2 boards?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I think that would go into a deeper, more technical conversation than this is for. But again, if you'd like, I'm happy to workshop with you a little bit later on.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. So the Cliff Notes version of that is a system come up with a system that works for you. If you're working with one person, it might not need to be that complicated. If you're finding that, as Sebastian and Joanna are, that you're bringing more and more people in, you might need a more robust task solution and become sort of a task management solution there. Okay, so last one, maybe last one. Unless Kristen, you riff some more for us. But
this is great. Don't procrastinate and delegate. So when we say that, it's like you kind of know what you want to get done, but you might be hesitant and you might think, I can just kind of maybe think about this tomorrow. Just get it done. It's easier just to ask your assistant to do something than to overthink it. And most VAs that work in the context that I do, we take delegation very well. So if you just literally say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z done, and this is what I need it done by, we have it, and just let it go, release it, and we'll get back to you with the results that you're looking for. That's usually how that goes. But once you procrastinate, we can't really help you if you're not telling us what you need to do. And a lot of people have a hard time releasing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, I think two really interesting things for me. One is every time I have procrastinated on just sharing, I've regretted it because time passes and it's the thing I can't get back, right? And the reason sometimes I hold on to it is like, well, I haven't quite figured out what the request is yet. I haven't gotten it perfect. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know if my virtual assistant is the right, perfect person for it. All those things come up. But I got to say, every time I've given something away earlier rather than later, the thinking keeps moving. The work keeps moving. The work starts going. And so even if the result is not what I ultimately would want, it's almost like having someone went and did a first draft for you and pushes you to the next spot. And I would even say this is almost a procrastination tip. If you find that there's something you're procrastinating on, like you just really been meaning to, I saw on a chat that we share, really been meaning to organize all those photos and get in there and choose some great ones for a photo gallery on the website. But I just am not doing it. Why am I not doing it? Well, don't. Give it over to somebody else. They'll get it started, and they're going to get it to at least even if it's not finished, to a new place, and that might encourage you to finish the task that you've been procrastinating on. I think that's a lot of things.
And I don't have anything other than best practices.
Cool.
Just the clarity.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for that, Kristen. And that takes us to the very end, the final. There's no more to say except to answer your questions for a little while. And I'll say one more word. If you would like to feel like a little help scaling up your operation and figuring out how to work with a bunch of people or be a little more efficient in your communication with your team or your clients, I'd be happy to help you out. You're welcome to email me. And if you are looking for your first dedicated virtual assistant, Kristen is a great person to reach out to. She's got a great network, and she's got also a great talent at understanding people's personalities, so she'd be able to find a good match for you.
Yes.
And with that, any questions that are in people's minds about hiring their first virtual assistant or getting a little bit of work done?
Yeah, so just Oh, go ahead.
Okay, mine's a quick question. Do you would you say it's normal to give a certain amount of time to get a task done? Because I was doing that at the beginning to kind of assign, like, this task should take 20 minutes just to give them an idea, because I found if I didn't do that, then sometimes they went way overboard and did like 3 hours of research when I really just wanted 20 minutes of research. So do you find it's normal to do that, or do you have a way to better tell them that I just need the basics of that task, or I don't want you to spend 3 hours on this kind of thing?
What do you think, Kristen?
With that, again, that would just be a clarity thing. When you have a task that you feel takes 20 minutes for you, you kind of have to think about, is that their skill set? Is that where they have knowledge at? In particular, I've had that situation before myself as a VA, and my client, I love her to death, and we're really close. But she asked me to find something very specific, and she said, oh, you should be able to find it in like 35, 40 minutes by calling all these Nordstrom and Bloomingdale stores in San Diego County. Well, it took about 2 hours. And she was shocked that it took as long. So it's kind of like, just if your expectations for timing align and you just feel that she's being excessive in her timing, let her know that, and just kind of really be casual about it, because you seem like the type who doesn't kind of want to come off to her as being overbearing. So kind of just make it real casual and say like, hey, you know what? I need you to do X, Y, Z. It shouldn't take more than 30 minutes. And if you feel like it's going to take a little longer, just shoot me a text and let me know. So it's like not aggressive or anything, but you put that expectation out there that you don't think it's going to take hours to do. Mm-hmm. And that should kind of clear that up a little bit for her.
I think you can add to things like, you can ask, like, do you think this can be done with 3 hours? Because Joanne, I'm guessing that part of what you're asking too is you're maybe paying hourly, and so you're thinking like, I gave over this work, and if it starts going like hour by hour by hour by hour by hour, then the money's kind of running away from me. Is that some of what you're thinking about?
Yeah, I think there was one task in particular. I wanted her to just look up something, and she just went on like this research rampage, mm-hmm. For 3 hours. So now I'm spending all this money on something I just wanted like some basic information about. Mm-hmm. So that, I mean, maybe I wasn't clear, but I was just like, can you just find me this information about this? I don't remember what it was, but I just remember I was like, well, what have you been doing? Because she said she didn't have time to get to the other tasks. And I was like, oh, well, what took a lot of time? And she's like, well, I spent like 3 hours researching this. And it was, in my mind, a small thing that I didn't need to spend that much time researching.
One thing you might do, you can, a couple of things. One is, in some cases, you can ask and say, how long do you think this will take? Or do you think it'll take about this much? In this case, it sounds like your assistant probably wouldn't have known. So in that case, you can set some milestones. So you can say, hey, after you work on this for an hour, just don't work anymore. Just email me and tell me what you found or where you're at so far, so I can review it and make sure we're on the same page. Because it does happen that they need to do a little work, but after a little while, you want to say like, okay, let's check in and make sure we're on the same page on this. So that would be one way. Or if there's a milestone, like as soon as you find this phone number or a sentence that looks like this, tell me. But probably for this situation you're talking about, it's saying, hey, as soon as you put an hour of work dedicated to this, just let me know what you've got so I can reassess. I think that might be a good technique.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions?
So are you going to have the slides available for us?
I'd be happy to share the slides. Yeah, we can send those out. Great. Mm-hmm. And I joined
a little bit late, Alex, but when I joined, you were asking us what we might use a virtual assistant for.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, if you didn't do it already, if Kristen could just kind of walk us through a random list of stuff she does. It doesn't have to be, a long time period, but just to kind of get our minds going as to what's possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything is possible, first of all. And with my particular personality, I'm very open-minded, and I don't really say, there's nothing too outlandish. in my opinion. Like some of my peers, they're more like 100% business and just business oriented only. I'm okay going more into the personal side of like families and vacations and date nights and things like that. So I've done everything from planning travel, random travel vacations, right, Alex? And then also date nights, hair appointments, nail appointments, surprise parties, car shopping, car negotiation I've done before too. Real estate, like transaction management, gift buying for people who they may or may not like very much, but just need to send something anyways, to show that they care, but really don't. And everything in between. I've traveled for clients who say, hey, you know what? I need you to come help me at my office. If I fly you out, will you come out? Sure. Let me get my babysitter and I'll be there. Just really anything, we can do it all. It just depends on what they're willing to do. But there's like a whole array. It's just, you have to just keep in mind that some people don't feel comfortable taking on the more personal side. But personally, that's probably my favorite, is the more personal side. I also do business, of course, but it's just more fun for me. And I think it's just because I'm in my early 30s and I'm a mom, and it's just what I do naturally for myself anyways.
What other questions do we have?
I have a question.
Sure.
So I've never had a virtual assistant, and I think if I would want to work with someone on an ongoing basis, just because getting to know them and them getting to know me sounds like it'd make things a lot easier. But if you don't know how useful it's going to be, how much you're going to be able to use it, how do you sort of arrange that sort of relationship?
Do you want to answer that, Alex?
Sure. I think one thing to think about is a virtual assistant can work with you depending on, it's an arrangement with an individual person. So that's one thing. It's a dedicated assistant. It's a specific person. And so you got to figure out what's going to work for that specific person and you. So a virtual assistant relationship could be you check in for 1 hour twice a week and just talk some stuff out. And then you ask for some things. And so ultimately you're talking about like, I don't know, less than 5 hours a week, less than, maybe less than that. So I think it's just figuring out how much you're willing to commit right now and dedicate right now for it. And along that same note, it's still, is this person have the right skill set and the right personality for me? Is that a helpful answer?
I think so. What I heard was decide what you're willing to commit now, and you can adjust it later.
Yeah, I think so. And as with any relationship, it's possible that the one you start won't be the one that you have forever, and something will come up on either end that makes it so that it's not going to work out. People have life changes, or you might find it's not what you need changes, things like that. So I think if you're willing to go in with that understanding that you're looking for something that can be ongoing, but you understand that it won't always work out, I think you'll find a good match for you.
All right, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
To add to that, I would also say start small. Just start really simple and basic, and then as you grow to know somebody and kind of learn their personality and they get to learn about you, you can decide further if that's just something that you feel like you need to deal with that person for more things.
What do you mean by that? I'm sorry. What do you mean by start small?
Okay, so like on the level that I am and that my peers are, where we're not on Upwork and we're not outsourced from various parties, we're completely independent. They usually, like, for instance, will sell their services and package in like hourly packages per se, like 10 hours a month, 20 hours a month, 40 hours a month, whatever. So in that instance, you just say, hey, you know what, let's just go ahead and like do like a trial for like maybe 5 hours this month to see how we get along, to see if I can utilize you. And if I feel like 5 hours isn't enough, cool, the next month we can bump it up and see what works for you, rather than just jumping in and then feeling overwhelmed and like, oh my goodness, I don't even really need her for 30 hours a month. And I just really need help setting up Instacart and figuring out something really simple. So it just really depends, but start small, like baby steps before you go running that marathon with them.
All right. The monthly hour packages, that helps a lot too. I didn't.
Yeah, that's usually the go-to for most VAs. I know some people don't like fixed rate, but again, I feel personally that the fixed rate or the non-fixed rate type of stuff is kind of more towards Upwork and just like pay per task. That's not really beneficial to somebody who does what I do, where I'm like building and forming a bond and relationship with you, where you're comfortable to text me at 8 p.m. saying, oh my goodness, I forgot to send my girlfriend flowers and it's her birthday tomorrow. Please help me. Because you do that in States, India, they're like, oh, well, we'll get back to you in 24 to 48 hours. And I'm like, okay, I'm on it. Let me feed my kid real fast. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. That helps a lot.
Yeah, not a problem.
And as you guys were talking, Damian, Kristen, I realized that one great way to start small is to just speak out, get on the phone, or especially go to Zoom conference like this with your assistant and speak out your calendar together. Like go over your calendar, talk it out aloud, do that kind of weekly review that we all know we're supposed to be doing but don't do, right? Of looking what was last week like, what were the wins, what did I miss, what's this week looking like, what's coming up next week. And as I look over my calendar and maybe my task list, I'm going, oh, I need to take care of that. Oh, I need to take care of this. Speak those things aloud, and your assistant who wants to do great work for you will be able to begin to say, oh, I think I can help you with that. That's an area that'd be really easy for me to help you.
Good stuff.
On people's minds. Any more questions? Hearing none, I'll just thank everyone so much for joining and hanging with us and being great participants. And again, I'm Alex. I think everybody here already knows me. If you would like to just chat about improving the way that you work with your teams, I'd be happy to do that with you. And if you're looking to work with your first dedicated virtual assistant to get on that level right away, contact Kristen. She's a great resource for that. We'll send out some of these slides and some special notes after this. And I don't know if applause really works, but I don't know. We can like wave at Kristen to thank her for being with us tonight, her expertise.
It was good talking to you guys, and of course, feel free to email me. I'm usually on my phone all the time, so feel free to email me if you have any questions, and if you're ready to go to that level. And if it's something that I can't do, I have a whole network of super qualified US-based, really cool ladies and gentlemen too, if that's what you prefer, who would be willing to talk to you about it.